Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Lore Cave. In today's episode, we're covering the most important part of the lore for everyone. A story of timelines, universal resets, the old gods, and more, as we discuss the two stories of the Genesis of Elinciae known to its inhabitants. This set of stories is very important as it shapes a lot of the historical events that follow the Grand Exodus, and all prospective game masters for MDOD should at least have some idea of the way the world was made. So sit back, grab your popcorn and hot cocoa, and let's discuss the two Genesis stories of Elinciae. Make sure to subscribe and join the Discord, by the way, for more. False Genesis. In the beginning, when the lands were but open sea and the Draken Isles were all there was, two dragons awoke from their slumber, Sylvari and Darvanis. They mingled, worked together, and in time created humanity, and as they grew closer, created the five in the mating of the dragons. Gul'shanen brought life to the Isles, taught farming and made great harvests in fall, and shaped the world's continents. Conreen brought life to the waters, fish in the sea and marshes, cut the earth's land to fill the space with water, brought the cold of winter and waters and rains of spring, and showed the people how to make boats and sail nearby. Jiri brought clouds to the sky to soothe the hot days of summer, spread the waters of spring, and carry the weather on winds of change. And with her might she brought life to the skies and birds singing in the trees. Sembrion then shaped the world's mountain and tectonics, bringing the heat of the summer, the deserts of the world, and the warmth of the fire in winter. And Nulbrig, the last of the five kin, taught the people to cherish the world and be inspired by its design, to encourage them to come up with fresh ideas for themselves, and guide their hands and decisions to prepare them for what was to come. Sylvari and Darvanis gave the people night and day, their sun and night respectively, and gave them all a way of life. And when the time grew near, the people's leader, Garthog Thog, helped found the Colored Ways, to shape and mold them to serve the regions far and wide, for the great Exodus was upon them. And as they left to fill out and shape this world, the people basked in the glory of creation the dragons had made, with only the wind in their sails to guide them to the new world before them. The preceding is the known story of the Genesis of Elinciae prior to the Dark Moon War of 612 CE, and is still to this day what most non-scholarly teachings tell of the creation of Elinciae. It's a story which I bring up first due to the nature of its forces, where, while it is true in some sense, as it explains the order of the dragon's birth, what each controls, and why the Colored Ways were formed, it misses a lot of important pieces of the story we'll cover during the true Genesis segment of our discussion today. The main reason for its incorrectness lies in the amount of unknown there is at the time of Garthog's fall and the universal collapse, as each of the three survivors had lost their memories due to destabilization and death in the case of Santos, and how he became Sylvari and Darvanis, or the sheer warping of falling into the infinite expanse of the black hole gate that occurred to Garthog Thog during Garthog's fall. By extension, as the Moonseed was all that was left of Alabaster and the Creator, their memories couldn't provide or shape this new world either, since they were both in a tug-of-war for power we will discuss shortly. In essence, the world of Elinciae was left with only shreds of the creation magic needed to keep it afloat, and an abundance of judgment magic pouring from the dragons, shaping the world to their judgment and will. We'll discuss the innate oddities of magic in a few more weeks when we discuss the magic of Elinciae, but here is without a doubt the most true part of this story: how powerful judgment magic can be in the hands of the dragons. Their power and efforts shaped and warped the lands to their liking, making a hospitable zone for humanity via Sylvari's light, acting like the missing stars, Gul'shanen providing the earth with the food its denizens would eat, Conreen with its water for those who thirst, Jiri with the winds that change and shape the weather, and Sembrion with warmth he provided to all. Nolbrich's part in the story further states the truth that he greatly accelerated human thought and design concepts during their time on his isle, as without him, boats and the means of engineering and designing their homes would have not occurred by the time of the Great Exodus. What the story gets wrong, however, is the fact that it never states anything about the universal collapse due to there being no knowledge or memory of it. The concept isn't even something the dragons or Elinciae's people could have even imagined, because it was far beyond not only their understanding of the wells of creation magic or judgment magic within the world, but far beyond their understanding of the moon seed, which, other than the lost memory of Santos buried deep within the concepts of Solvari and Darvanis, was the only remnant of the universal collapse that bared evidence to its happening. Without the right tools, theories, concepts, or ideas, it made sense that none would know what happened and where the story came from. A belief in the utmost power of the dragons, and a belief in the strength they carried with them. The Old Gods. Before we continue into lore involving the true genesis of Elinciae, there's some important info involving the Old Gods we should discuss. The Old Gods are beings that existed before the universal collapse, and are the four beings that effectively made and shaped the universe. These four are known mostly by their titles, however two of the four have no names. The four are the Creator, the being that made the other three, and the being who upholds all creation magic, which binds the world together. After a while, the Creator creates Zeregios, or the Source. Zeregios made all of the ideas the Creator had involving the generation of the universe, all of its nebulas, the planets, and the life that would fill them. He supplies the ideas behind all of the original creations, and gives the idea for the balance, or Santos, the being which grants the balance of all things in life and death, good and evil, and oversees that life is as fair as it should be. They exist in the universe they had created for a long time, observing its life and observing the technology they created, until finally, when seeing the progress the people of the universe had made, Zeregios came up with his final idea the Creator would go along with, the creation of the final of the four gods, known as the End. The End consumed all, and every time the End was born from a dying star closest to the astral gate, a universal reset would soon follow. When a reset would occur, however, the ideas for the universe would always be the same, with nothing new changing in the infinite expanse of space and time, because that infinitum, as an infinite size is, would always have the same outcome. As such, Zeregios' boredom would grow, as there could never be anything new, eventually leading to what would be the true genesis of Elinciae. However, that's moving a little too quickly for this video. The Old Gods themselves have always been described in a multitude of ways, leaving most of their ideals to interpretation. The art I'm showcasing is of the interpretations of the characters that my artists had. There are, however, some important rules of their appearance that is always the same, regardless of which story is told. The Creator, in all instances, is known to have black raven-like wings, and a blank mask that is always on, or to symbolize the infinite power of creation as a whole. They, and I say they due to the rules of how the Creator works, are meant to be a representation of your game master's influence on the world. As such, describing the Creator is like describing every person who has played MDOD. Santos is a shapeshifter with his appearance, however most commonly has appeared in cat form, simply due to it being a calming and gentle appearance, with his dark half being the half that would become Darvanis, and the kinder light half becoming Solvari. This union is the embodiment of Santos, and what makes him even more special amongst the Old Gods is his creation magic being used as a way to seam his two halves together, with the two halves being made of judgment magic, magic normally incompatible with creation. That info is important when understanding why the universal collapse wasn't worse, by the way. Zoregios is said to be a being with a lot of mystery and intrinsic influence, with tons of baubles and tech gadgets he's gathered across the universe are made for himself. In the end, well, he's a giant intergalactic monster formed of stardust and nebulas themselves that eats planets for breakfast and sleeps in black holes. As such, the insane power each of the old gods have is understandable, which leads us to the tragedy of their undoing, and how Elinciae was formed. True Genesis. A universe is born, very similar to ours, by grinding particles and space dust made from matter and antimatter exchanging blows, until an imbalance bubble is made, producing space. In space, a dense mass of all collected particles form, igniting a spark of creation magic, and with it, the astral gate. At the heart of the clouds of the astral gate, a being is formed like a pearl in a clam, the Creator. Peeking in and out of the astral gate, the Creator slowly observes all the empty expanse and gets confused. Amongst the astral gate, he forms himself a friend, someone to understand the world around him, a being that can have ideas about the universe, how it works, and why it is the way it is. This is the Source, a being of infinite ideas, with infinite wants to talk to the Creator about. The Creator, of being a being of the astral gate's own, uses his natural creation to design and create the things the Source requests, designing planets, stars, nebulas, galaxies, and with ways between all of them, all in black holes and white holes, ways to transverse the universe they were making. As they started to work together, they agreed to make a being that completed their discussions, brought balance, and could properly judge the good ideas from the bad. Using both of their magic, they developed a new form, judgment magic, which they then embodied into a new being known as the Balance. With the Balance's help, they gave each other names, with only the Source's and the Balance's name ever being recorded in history. Zoregios and Santos each helped the Creator design a universe of their own making, creating that which hadn't been seen, remaking all their ideas into actual real beings and things. The marvel of creation inspires each of them, and as they watch it unfold, interacting with their creations every so often, they learn of new things to create, infinitely expanding upon the universe they had made. As time goes on and they run out of things to design and create, they sit and watch history they had written unfold, making adjustments to stories they were observing, delving into the laws that define this timeline, and writing the story in a permanent ink that stained time and space itself. Both a blessing and a grave mistake. And as they watched the life they had made grow, they got saddened, lost inspiration. For all had been made, nothing was new, and they saw people slowly approach their own godhood, and fear of unbridled power in the hands of the people of the universe was too much to handle for the three. So Zoregios made one final idea, one that would change all of what they had created, something they had all deemed too far, too much, something that was a threat even to them, if not made proper. They created the end of all things, something that would shred all things they had made to let them start anew. And the idea excited them. They had written a story that would play itself through the echoes of time, and would at this point end at their own volition, to begin again anew. And so, they created it. The monstrous being which could devour the planets the people lived on, the stars which gave them light, and compress all the black holes back into space dust from which the astral gate, and by extension, the Creator, was born from. It couldn't eat the astral gate, or the combined dust of all things, but it could destroy everything that mattered to reset the universe. And so, they planted the end seed in a star, and let its blight spread across the universe, slowly watching it consume and destroy everything they had made. And though the Creator was sad and in pain at losing every creation, they knew shortly it would all be remade again. And so they watched, its final creation being the undoing of all, as the planetarium that had followed in the astral gate slowly, one by one, fell to nothing. And so, he was happy. Without food to eat, the end fell asleep, reverting to the seed to be distributed come the new beginning. And then, they started anew, again, making the same set of stories from the permanent markings they had left on the universe, the story they had written in time, watching it unfold, watching what they had made in the past universal reset period come to fruition, as time itself became the thing they sought to sow, and seeing there was nothing else to create, nothing new to ideate. Zeregios slowly got bored, while the Creator focused on seeing the creations he had made in the universe, and viewed the infinite in a permanent tour that always ended just before the star that held the seeds to sow the end would go supernova, releasing the destructive force to reset the universe once again. And Zeregios, as he was, grew more and more and more bored. He counted each and every reset, bored at all the passing time, a god practically stripped of his reason to live. He sought his own means of creation, and made his own little doodads and baubles, but he never could make himself planets, let alone his own version of this universe. And then, he had a terrifying idea. What would happen if I broke the written laws of a timeline? What would happen if I released the end early? What then? He would think these thoughts to himself quietly, theorizing on his own planets on the outskirts of the universe, where not many living things were, due to the low life density. Theorizing, testing, divining, theorizing more and more and more, and doing some science to find out. He discovered and learned to understand how to thoroughly manipulate creation magic, and became the most powerful mage the universe has ever seen, and being the only being ever known to cast the level 99 tier spells that bend time and space themselves, and leave permanent marks in the timeline. He had made something to edit the fabric of the very rhythm that kept their story moving forward, something that none of them had ever been able to do or modify before. And yet, he wasn't done. He kept testing more and more, making blueprints for machines that could destroy stars, slowly building them stronger and stronger, until the machine could burn a star's fuel so rapidly it'd be forced to go supernova. After all, nothing was stopping him. Gods only spoke to each other now at the end of the universe. Santos became a hermit on an abandoned, lonely planet, where he could observe and judge the events unfolding, balancing the goods with their evils, lives with their deaths, and so forth. And as said, the Creator had become a tourist, and the useless rock he took to was bland, pointless for the Creator to see. Sanity was something he stopped caring for a while ago. His mind was one that practically spoke psychopathy, finding ways to sway the others that anything was wrong, that he was simply making his tinkered machines on the planet he chose so he could do something with himself. He never mentioned the fact that he was amassing the means to kill the timeline. And so he built, until the machine was perfect, and so happened to find the means to begin his own little cult, a group he wanted to lead on the 42nd thousandth universal reset. Yes, he had counted exactly to the moment he wanted, to the second he prepared, and when he caused this variation to the timeline, he knew that all premonitions of the gods would have been lost. He was going to spark the greatest change imaginable. The vacation planet of Undura 3 is a planet which orbited the star closest to the center of the Dragon Nebula. The center contained a black hole that was the only of its kind, for it was the entry to the Astral Gate. And the star, Ansel Octon, was the star which held the end. It was a red giant at the time, approaching supernova, but well in the safe period for those wishing to have the party of their lives. Amongst the many people living there were 8 people, all of which were there for a multitude of many different reasons, such as an actual vacation, a home away from galactic prison, money, bounty hunting, the whole 9 yards. And yet, fate had set that these 8 would be thrusted into something unbelievable to all of the universe, for they were to be the 8 heroes to prevent the full collapse of the timeline and the universe itself. One of which, if you care to know, was Garthog Thog himself, the progenitor of all people on Elinciae. He just wouldn't know that quite yet. Starburn approached the star with a heavyweight spaceship, or an HWSS, mounted with a cannon Regios had so happened to slip the blueprint to a certain set of pirates early into this universal reset as a way of getting Starburn together. And as night fell on the vacation home and the 8 went to bed, the cannon was aligned to fire. And so they prepared to fire this supernova bomb, the space pirates assaulting Undura 3 as a distraction while the cannon powered up. Regios at this point had realized that already the timeline was beginning to be rewritten by his actions, changing in ways he had never seen before. This was exciting. This was what he had been striving for. This was the change he wanted. The change he needed. At this time, alarms rang out across the Galactic Federation to send protection to the planet, and Santos picked up a new evil on his omnipresent radar, something that shouldn't have been in the timeline. He set in motion that a group of people needed to survive this event, so they may help protect from whatever was to come in a balance to this oddly new threat. He fueled up the Lightspeed, his SS-class spaceship he used for transport. The bad omen spoke ill humors to him, and he was pretty sure it would need to be prepared for something more. So he provided what it needed, and prepared for his moment. The group awoke to alarms across the hotel they were all staying in, a fury of fires and screams surrounding them as they rushed to the transport teleporter, in an attempt to reach safety as the space pirates raided. An old man, Santos in disguise, distributed some small laser pistols to them as protection, and wished them luck, having now found who he was going to protect in the inevitable event to occur. The GAD, or Galactic Alliance Department, of the Galactic Federation, was now working to transport everyone on Undura 3 to safety, when finally the Starburn cannon fired, causing the star to go supernova. There wasn't enough time to prepare the warp drive to move away, and as such, they released as many escape pods with micro warp drives as possible. If any were to survive, this was to be the only way. Of course, none survived the might of the supernova, except the 8 who were saved by Santos, who used his judgment magic to warp them to his home planet, where the Lightspeed was. This supernova released the seeds of the end early, yet their predictive locations were set to still be their normal planets, just far too early for them. And of course, the end only knew its life cycle, so it started to form and destroy all life in its path. And the 8, now with the guidance of Santos, started working with the GAD to collect the pieces of the end and find a way to stop Starburn and Regios from ending the universe. Of course, they didn't know Regios, was leading Starburn until well after the events that had just transpired, when the final fights were occurring. As they grew stronger and stronger, and fought more of the creatures blighted by the end, beings that worked as carrier hosts for the pieces, Santos blessed and provided the strength they would need to battle these creatures, and handle their way against the might of Starburn. The group was unbelievably powerful, and it perplexed the balance in many ways. Why now, he thought, but he clearly hadn't considered Zeregios at all, until the fateful moment. On the planet of Augustine 1, the location of the supposed final shard, they had a run-in with Zeregios, where he enacted the final part of his plan, stealing the shards from the group as he locked them with an infinite level 99 time stasis spell meant to remove them from his path. He explained to the group how he had used them as merely pawns in his game, how in this insanity he had ridden for himself, he found a way to write the universe anew. And now, he couldn't be stopped. The group prayed and prayed and prayed for Santos' arrival, learning that the being in front of them was of godly power, and none other than the Source had shown the players alone that their chances were slim to none. It was then in this stasis that Santos finally came to their aid, but in his attempts to help, he realized what had occurred. He realized who he was dealing with, and apologized to the group, knowing full well he should have been more active and gone against his own rules. This is, of course, all while now fighting with the crazed god, and unable to handle both Zeregios and breaking the spell, went to battle him for 3 years, while attempting in every way possible to contact the creator for some assistance. During this long, arduous battle, Zeregios practically tears Santos apart, trying to reason with him that this way will make things different. This way will be new and fun, and in an attempt to corrupt Santos, offered him part of the powers of creation he planned to take. For as they fought, he explained how he discovered that they could absorb the creation magic around them to empower them. And since all of them had that creation magic within them in large reserves, absorbing the power of another god could vastly multiply their strength, and perhaps grant them powers not even the creator had. Santos refused, of course, sensing the folly and insanity in this plowing, and begged Zeregios to reconsider. After all, he'd be killing the only family he's ever had, and why would he enact such drastic maneuvers? They explained to each other as they fought, magic on magic, wit on wit, and blade on blade, their ideologies behind their concepts of this, and how the new universe could even work, and why Zeregios hated the infinitum of the timeline, while Santos argued it had to be this way, or nothing was able to be controlled, why this chaos should not be the natural state of the universe, with Zeregios saying the fresh ideas made his life had purpose, and he, of all the gods, had the short end of the stick by this forced order that Santos sought to protect. During this time, he slowly started absorbing the End's power through the seeds he had collected from the group, destroying them and absorbing the End through the seeds into him. Through these means, he slowly grew stronger and stronger and stronger, stronger still and stronger than Santos, until he fully melded and became one with the End, as a new being known as Alabaster, the fifth and final old god. Alabaster had all the chaotic wants and desires of Zeregios, and the destructive planet-eating power of the End, and all the fearful chaotic destruction a being of pure fury and rage could want to destroy and change this universe. Santos dies to the might of Alabaster, who in this rage absorbs the only parts it can, that of the creation magic that bound his judgment magic. Judgment magic is incompatible with creation magic, as one is the laws, while the other is the design itself. And while they can interact, they themselves cannot mix and mingle. In the need to consume, Alabaster had skimmed over the judgment magic it couldn't eat, instead consuming the bindings of Santos and forcibly shredding the two halves of him apart, killing him in a violent manner of unmaking him at the seams. As Alabaster moved on from the old god, the dying power of Santos, with everything that he had left in him, called to the creator in the astral gate that hell was coming, then used his remaining power to break the spell on the eight, and told them of the astral gate's location. When they finally arrived, the astral gate's normally glowing soft pink clouds seemed drab with fire and brimstone in the air, and the whole universe seemed to be starting to break at the seams. At the peak of the astral gate, in the center of its planetarium, fought a very wounded creator and a very wounded Alabaster, slowly absorbing the power of the creator when his bladed arm injected and ripped into the creator. It's this absorption of a being born of the astral gate's influence and the soul of the universe itself that was slowly starting to break the design nature of the universe, its timeline, and everything that had been defined so long ago. Alabaster was ending the universe and working to start his own, as that was his only desire. However, there was a major mistake brewing he wouldn't understand just yet. Garthog felt the presence of a war and rushed forward, the barbarian wanting a taste of the fight and to save the only group which had brought him some form of solace, of companionship. As he finally reached its peak, he saw the incoming death blow to the creator. A storm of blades and magic whirling around the wings of the creator being slashed through the single gap in his exhausted defenses, and in a single deep thrust, Alabaster had shredded the creator and absorbed him. Garthog, in an attempt to save the creator, had rushed to his aid and tried to make the ultimate sacrifice. Sadly, a moment too late, of course, and as Alabaster compressed all that power into himself, the creation magic, which relied on the creator to exist, all tore itself from the universe. Garthog pushed himself and the two gods over the edge in his attempt to save them, falling into the infinite expanse of the astral gate. And as creation itself ripped apart, so too did all the planets, all the nebulas, all the stars, and Alabaster and the creator, and the other 7. All of them, except for Augustine 3, the two ripped in half parts of Santos, and Garthog, who had the guidance of the creator's dying wish protecting him and the planet he was to fall to. And when he awoke to 2 dragons, Sylvari and Darvanis, and no memories of what had just transpired, and a world shifted by a timeline with no story written. Elinciae was born of Augustine 3, the Dragons of Santos, and of course, the Moon Seed, the compressed, broken form of Alabaster. And from that came all the demons and dark threads which would plague the world up until the Dark Moon War. That is the true story of the genesis of Elinciae. A planet left over from a shredded universe, a creator lost to it, and a timeline writing itself with no guidance was what Elinciae had when it was first being explored and judged by the power of the dragons. And that is the scene from which the heart and soul of the stories of Emdod and its lore comes from. It's at this point that one may realize Zeregios did get what he wanted, but in the process, he had lost himself. And all of that destruction and chaos he caused would last until the Dark Moon War occurs, and the story that involves everything leading up to it. But let's save that for a later date, shall we? With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more, down in the description is not only going to be a playlist for this series, but a playlist for the music once it's out, and a playlist for the campaign I'm running on the channel, Depths of the Blighted Heart. If you'd like to help out or just contribute to the ideas of MDOD, fan art is always welcome and appreciated in the Discord server, also seen below. Leave a comment for any lore you'd like to see covered in the future, or if you're just confused about something. I always try to respond to all the comments on every video, so if you'd like to know more, ask me there or in my Discord. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye!